Haunted thoughts churn in the mind of a young Englishman as he sails toward a remote island in the South Atlantic to take up work as a meteorologist. His inner monologue broken when Captain Axel approaches, lighting a cigarette and telling him they are almost there. In September 1914, they reach the island, yet no one is there to greet them. The young man has come to replace another meteorologist stationed here, but there is no sign of him. Captain Axel accompanies him in the search, leading them to the lighthouse where they knock with no answer. The young man forcing the door to find the island's only other inhabitant, Gruner, the lighthouse keeper, who greets them with cold indifference. When Axel asks about the missing weather officer, Gruner says the man died of typhus. His nonchalance matched only by his habit of walking about nude, irritating the captain. The young man leaves the lighthouse and, after bidding Axel goodbye, wanders the island, already feeling his fate will mirror that of his predecessor a year, measuring the wind's strength and direction before being relieved. Back at his cabin, he begins unpacking but finds the diary of the previous meteorologist, Aldor. Its pages filled with sketches, a photograph of his wife, and a drawing of the lighthouse surrounded by strange creatures. The next morning, he discovers a circular arrangement of shells and stones, then carries his telescope to the coast to begin work, spying through the lenses to see Gruner stretching naked, ready for another day of idleness. That night while reading, rustling outside the door makes him think Gruner is about, but the sounds intensify into scratching and growling until a reptilian hand slides under the door. He stomps on it, making the unseen thing shriek and thrash. More noises come, and he hides beneath the floorboards as something tries to force its way in, the creatures eventually breaking inside to find the place empty, their footsteps halting before one peers through a gap, only to be met with the stab of his knife into its eye. Shaken, he locks himself in the cramped space for the night. At dawn, he goes to the lighthouse, begging Gruner to let him stay there, but is refused. Resolved to defend himself, he spends the day fortifying his cabin and is heartened to find a rifle in one of the crates. When night falls, the swarm emerges from the darkness, closing in on the cabin as he fires at them. But their numbers are overwhelming and he sets a fire to drive them back, flames forcing them to retreat while consuming his shelter. Rain saves the structure from total destruction, and the next day he spots Gruner leaving the lighthouse, following him down to the rocks with thoughts of ambush. But before he can act, a blue-skinned female sea creature attacks him. He raises his rifle, but Gruner stops him, showing that she is vulnerable and not to be harmed. Seizing the chance, the young man offers Gruner supplies in exchange for shelter. Gruner calls him friend so that the creature will accept him, and later they return to Gruner's quarters to collect his things. The truth becomes clear: Aldor did not die of typhus but was killed by the sea creatures. As the sun lowers and shadows stretch across the island, Gruner warns they must hurry back to the lighthouse before the night brings the next attack. They haul the supplies up into the lighthouse, and after the long walk, Gruner collapses from exhaustion. The next morning, Friend wakes to the sensation of the female sea creature licking his hand, her tongue cool against his burned skin as she tries to heal him, only then realizing he has been asleep for 2 days. Gruner appears, takes stock of their ammunition, and explains that the creature, which he calls a toad, is like a dog, loyal to her master no matter how cruel he is. Friend studies her, captivated by the way she moves, sensing she is different from the rest. But Gruner warns not to trust her too much, certain her calm, silent demeanor hides darker intentions. He shows Friend more of the lighthouse, taking him up to the lantern room, where Friend asks why he never left the island when given the chance. Gruner answers that he will never return to the civilized world. Now that he is master of his own destiny, Friend says he will board the next ship he sees, and Gruner simply wishes him luck. Later, Friend reflects on how just a few days of isolation have altered his perspective, organizing his few possessions when the creature appears unexpectedly, chewing on a candle with innocent ignorance. As he tries to explain its purpose, Gruner calls from above, ordering him to bring his rifle. That night, Friend watches Gruner prepare for the attack, the older man laying out instructions before firing the flare gun into the darkness, the signal for a long night to begin. While the female creature wails into the sky, a horde of sea creatures surges toward the lighthouse, Gruner firing into them without hesitation. Friend holds his position for a moment, but fear overwhelms him, and he slowly backs away until he collapses, leaving Gruner to fight alone against the swarm. By morning, Gruner is furious at Friend's uselessness and sends him to fetch water. When Friend returns, he hears pounding and a strange wailing from Gruner's room, only to glimpse the older man coupling with the female sea creature. They later eat in heavy silence, Friend unable to confront him, Gruner finally breaking the tension by slamming the table and warning he has only one chance left. That night, Gruner once again draws the monsters in with the flare gun. But when they appear, Friend's terror takes over, prompting Gruner to lock him out on the balcony to face the creatures alone. Friend's pleas and the roar of gunfire fade as Gruner drifts into sleep. At sunrise, he is shocked to see Friend still alive, standing before him covered in blood and staring blankly. Months pass, and the two fall into a rhythm nights filled with back-to-back attacks that force them to keep constant watch. Days unchanged, the lengthening nights broken only by the raw presence of nature. They manage a fragile coexistence. Friend fetching water each day, Gruner maintaining the weapons. Friend suspects the creatures are drawn to reclaim the female, yet wonders why she allows her own kind to be slaughtered, and why they do not attack on certain nights. Gruner has no interest in such questions, intent only on killing them all. One day, Friend returns to his weathered cabin to recover some belongings and catches sight of himself in the mirror. Startled by how much his appearance has changed, trimming his beard, he tries to feel some connection to the man he once was. On the way back to the lighthouse, he comes across the massive skeleton of a whale and pockets a piece of bone. That night, no attack comes, making him believe the lulls between battles can be worse than the battles themselves. Still, they use the time to prepare for what's next. While Friend wanders the island, he comes across the female creature and, for the first time, approaches her without fear. His hand resting on her cold skin as a strange fondness grows inside him, prompting him to give her the name Anaris, though Gruner continues to treat her as a servant and slave for his own purposes. One evening, Gruner invites him to a game of chess, and as they play, Friend shares his theories about the sea creatures, but Gruner silences him, urging him to focus on the board and push for a checkmate. As the move is made, Gruner suddenly raises his rifle past Friend's shoulder. Spotting a creature creeping up behind him, the attack has already begun. They rush to the higher levels of the lighthouse as the swarm pours in, firing at the advancing horde, but quickly being overwhelmed by the suddenness of the assault. They retreat to the lantern room where the beacon's light sweeps the night, Gruner limping after a vicious bite to his foot. Barricading themselves inside, they spend the night listening to claws scrape against the glass, Gruner singing a mournful love song as if preparing for the end until sunrise finally drives the creatures away. That morning, Anaris tends to Gruner's injured foot, her tongue probing the wound to clean it, and it's clear they can't survive another night like that. Supplies, ammunition, and resolve are dwindling. Later, Friend spots a ship on the horizon and races for the flare gun, desperate for rescue, but Gruner wrestles him to the ground to stop him. Anaris stepping in to protect Friend and only stoking Gruner's rage. Taking the flare gun, Gruner storms out, ignoring Friend's shouted accusation that he's only afraid of being left alone to fight. In the days that follow, Friend finds a way to communicate with Anaris, showing her a small boat he has carved from bone in hopes she'll understand, and she eventually leads him to an abandoned rowboat hidden away on the shore far from the lighthouse. Back inside, Friend tells Gruner about the boat, but Gruner claims he already knew of it. A Portuguese castaway had once used it to try to escape after a shipwreck, but the creatures killed him. He adds that the wreck's cargo holds dynamite, though by now it's likely waterlogged. Friend is eager to dive to the wreck using an atmospheric diving suit, but Gruner dismisses the plan as suicide. One afternoon, Friend paints the rowboat, planning to restore it, when he hears a distant call and finds Anaris swimming nearby. Stripping off his clothes, he slips into the water toward her, closing the gap as if to kiss her, unaware that Gruner is watching from afar. That night, while Friend reads, Gruner silently hands him an old diving suit. Having changed his mind, the next day they row out to the wreck. Friend explaining that their only communication will be via rope tugs, and that 3 quick pulls mean he needs air. Donning the heavy suit, he descends into the shadowy depths, searching the wreck for crates of dynamite while Gruner tends the rope above. Underwater, Friend locates the crates and begins securing them for retrieval when a childlike sea creature peers at him through the visor, startling him into a fall. As more creatures circle, panic sets in and he tugs the rope, unsure if Gruner will pull him up or leave him, the tension stretching until Friend tears free of the suit and swims for the surface, where Gruner hauls him aboard. Back at the lighthouse, they pry open the crates, finding only 1 box of explosives still dry enough to use. Winter creeps in, and Friend, together with Gruner, hatches a plan to lure as many creatures as possible into the lighthouse before setting off the dynamite they've planted, hoping the blast will drive them away for good. But that night, the shoreline stays silent and no attack comes. 3 weeks pass in a blur, Gruner growing restless and impatient for the big one, Friend finding him one night standing outside in the cold, still waiting in desperation, urging him to come in and step away from the detonator. Another day, the two wait for Aneris to return with their lunch, but when she delivers starfish instead of fish, Gruner's temper flares and he kicks her, accusing her of warning her kind about their plan. Seizing Friend by the shirt, he declares a new plan, leave the door open to draw them inside for an ambush. That night, Friend sits watch by the open door while Gruner takes position above, ready to trigger the dynamite. Hours drag by without movement until Gruner, acting on Friend's theory, drags Aneris to his side and forces her to wail, convinced the sound will bring the others. When he steps away to light a lamp, a creature suddenly lunges at Friend from the doorway. He fights it off, but more are already pushing in, and he bolts upstairs to warn Gruner that they're inside. The creatures surge through the lighthouse, Gruner unable to fire the charge, forcing Friend to sprint to the very top and reconnect the detonator himself. The explosion rips through the structure, killing many of the invaders. Unsatisfied, Gruner sets off a second blast closer to the lighthouse, the shock knocking both men unconscious. Friend wakes at dawn and immediately searches for Gruner, shaking him awake and feeling a rush of relief when the older man stirs and begins to sing this time. Friend joins in. Around the beacon, chaos reigns. The beach is littered with the bodies of the slain, and Gruner methodically finishes off the wounded with a spear. When Friend notices a dead creature wearing a necklace, it sparks the thought that they might be more civilized than Gruner ever admits. But Gruner snatches the pendant and hurls it into the sea, stoking Friend's anger. That evening, as they keep watch for the next assault, Friend hears Aneris' voice joined by others in a mournful cry over their dead. Gruner comes to stand beside him, explaining that he had rescued Aneris years ago when she was a baby tangled in a fishing net and that she owes him her life. Aneris disappears, but Gruner dismisses Friend's concern, assuring him she will crawl back as she always has. Friend quietly regrets what they have done, while Gruner stays cold, showing no hint of remorse for the deaths. One morning, Friend arranges a circle of stones in the sand and places the carved bone in the center, a silent signal for rescue. Gruner, meanwhile, is still preparing another explosion to keep scaring the beasts away, yet the knights remain without attack. The next day, while Gruner sleeps, Friend tidies the mess inside and comes across a wedding photo of the older man, the word love scrawled 3 times on the back. He recognizes the woman from the diary and realizes Gruner is the former weather official, that beneath the brutality there once was human compassion. With that understanding, Friend wipes away the days he has been counting, accepting that everything here is forgotten. Even the reason he came survival is the only work left. Down on the shore, he retrieves the carved boat, only to be startled by the sudden appearance of a child sea creature. Behind it stands Aneris, more confident now, flanked by her kin. Friend senses they seek a truce, but Gruner does not. He wants only Aneris back, and she refuses. He repeats coldly that no one leaves Gruner as he turns toward the lighthouse. Without warning, he fires a flare into the child, striking it fatally. Aneris meets Friend's gaze with doubt and disappointment, before turning away as Gruner unleashes more shots. Friend chases him, the two grappling until he throws Gruner to the ground and drives a blade into his leg. Gruner, enraged, regains the upper hand and raises an axe to kill him. But Friend calls him by his real name, telling him he is not a murderer. The word halts him, the axe falls from his hands, and he whispers love as if remembering the man he once was. He steps outside into the night and lifts his eyes to the stars. Friend bolts the door behind him as the sea creatures close in, surrounding and killing Gruner. Months later, the next ship arrives with Friend's replacement. The captain greets him as Gruner, a mistake he does not correct. Bearing the weight of what is past, he steps fully into the role, deciding this is the peace he had been searching for. The new Gruner stands on the balcony, staring out at the boats beyond, while Aneris swims free in the open sea, crossing from one hell to another.